All right, what is up, NFT world? What is up, Web3? It's your man Jordan Rains at 50 Shades of Drunk. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm joined today by one of my friends in the NFT and Web3 world, Payman Cash. How you doing today, Cash?
I am fantastic. Thank you for having me, my brother.
Oh, this is fun. I'm really excited to, sit down with you in a somewhat formal setting. I don't want to call it too formal because we're both wearing tank
Right.
tops now.
Yeah,
But
exactly. This is a really relaxed time at home. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, keep the Web3 vibes pretty chill. But we're going to have a general chat today. If it's your first time listening to this podcast, the last show I did was about Quirklings. It's been probably over a month. Going through a slight rebrand on the podcast, going to be making it a little bit more Web3 and NFT overall macro and a little less in the certain projects that I might be in. 'Cause I think Web3 it's expanding, it's changing, it's growing. I don't want to pigeonhole myself down too much. So Cash and I are just going to talk about kind of our experiences in the space, some of our thoughts, comments, things we like, don't like, and these aren't necessarily right or wrong. They're just the opinions of two guys who are in a lot of NFT projects. In any project we bring up, we may hold, but we're not a team member of any project. I'm not anyway. I don't know if Cash is or not. We don't consult for anybody. We're just a couple of guys that, we do what we do. So, Cash, tell everybody a little bit about yourself that may not know who you are, what you do, why we should listen to you.
That's a tough one. The last part, I don't think anyone should listen to me because really, I don't think I'm really that experienced in NFT. Not just me. I think no one is really experienced per se in NFT because it's so new. But my name is Payman Cash. I, I guess you can say that I was. You want to know my nationality, or you want to know my work background? Which one would you be?
Whatever, man. I mean, just anything about you, just tell everybody anything you want. Your NFT background, your business background, a little bit about your life, where you live now. Like I said, anything. I mean, anything to give people a little bit of a compass to work with.
Yeah, so I've lived in 5 different countries. I've lived in Germany, UK, US, Iran, and US. I've traveled to 54 different countries as well. I also had, offices in Hong Kong, Dubai, Shanghai, Iran, Tehran, I guess, and US as well. Mostly focused, like when I was overseas, on, import export, anything from anti-gargles for oil drums to API pipes, to exchanges, to real estate in Dubai, where, I think everyone knows Dubai now, but when we were there was still desert. No freehold properties was there. So I was kind of early in that space as well. And this is exactly what we do. I reside in Florida as we speak. And I'm also more into real estate here in Florida. And, earlier this year, I've been wanting to get into NFTs for a while, and I've been interested because I think these opportunity only happens like every 20, 30 years, just like the dot coms. And although I was, 18, 19 when internet came, I wasn't bright enough to get into it and, learn coding and all that stuff. I came into internet when there was, MS-DOS. So I had the chance to grab that, but I unfortunately was not smart enough to do so. So when I heard about Web3 and the opportunities that it brought with it, I was really interested to be into that industry in the beginning, and just go with the punches and learn as I go. So I started getting to NFTs in February. I think it was Super Bowl Eve this year, February 13th. I had friends that I came, we were watching the game, and I noticed that they were in NFT, so they told me about MetaMask, wallets, and how it all works, and seed phrases. I had no idea, so I was kind of a student when I got in, and just asked about some project that I invested in, which of course, I got in at Ethereum at 4,400. So yeah, so no matter if I would have bought doodles or mutants or apes or whatever, because I poured in about like above $250,000 into NFT since February, and I don't think right now the value of them would be like $30,000, $40,000, and that's even if you bought doodles. So I don't think any project that you would have invested in February, you could be here and say, hey, I'm on the profit side. But what intrigued me about Web3 mostly, that it really got me into it very passionately, I saw something that I think most people miss about NFTs. And I think it's an opportunity that your PFP, right, is a brand. So at the end of the day, I think you can actually use these platforms to build relationship with people that you never had a chance to. Like I would never have a chance to meet you or any people like yourself and all the smart people in the space. I think it's a great opportunity that I think it's a great filtration system actually. Like for example, like I'm 45 years old, and if I want to go out and meet a new friend and make a new friend right now, it's really hard. Like I can't really become close to anybody. But with NFTs, because you're in the community base, because usually like communities are building the projects, you build relationship with people, and you can actually filter them out through the way they handle themselves, the way they tweet, are they trustful with money? Can you just do trust trades with them? So you have this filtration system in NFTs that you can kind of like, you don't know what they look like. So it doesn't really make a difference. It takes all that away, which I think is fascinating, that you don't have a perception of someone that needs to look a certain way to be successful, unsuccessful, right? You just fall in love with the person for what they are and the way they handle themselves. So I think that is one thing that has intrigued me in NFTs. And that's why I put a lot of time into them and holding spaces and trying to meet and network as much as I can, because I think there's going to be opportunities down the line for myself that is going to be presented the way that I'm, kind of handling myself in the space now. I think there's going to be companies that tomorrow that want to come in. They're going to need community managers. They're going to need people with repeatable backgrounds and stuff like that. And that I think this work that we put in today is going to pay off down the road by being kind of like hired, but maybe by those companies, or maybe as an advisor, consultant, whatever name you want to put on there. So I see the space more of that. Although I'm not a big degen person, like I don't flip projects and stuff. I like to build. That's one of the things that I loved about investing in certain projects that I'm in, that I could be part of the growth, and I could say, hey, I was helpful in this brand becoming what they are. And that is something that is really interesting to me.
Awesome. And what you said there, we have a couple of things. I'm going to parrot off a couple of things you said there. One about looking at the PFP and kind of getting to know somebody without getting to know somebody, Right. I put it as, I wrote down core beliefs in a project. A lot of projects have an ethos or a core belief system that if people buy in, you can kind of say, okay, like if they bought this project, they're this type of person. So like you said, as a filtration system, if you're in the same project with somebody, you say, okay, we at least have something somewhere in our core values that brought us here. And Then maybe, like you said, you can filter out who truly is there with the same values and who isn't. But it's a good, we call it, I guess, a lead as to like, okay, maybe this person is somebody I should get to know. So I think that what you said there is that is a huge utility to the overall space. And it is true, because there's a couple of people that I don't think I would ever been able to speak with or interact with, except for the various PFPs that I've had at different times. Guys that have DM'd me and trust me and asked for my advice because I don't speak one direction. I think the information's a two-way street. If you just say everything's positive, that doesn't make any sense. Things go up and down. So I'm very, my timeline, if you follow me, I know a lot of people block me. I know a lot of people don't like to hear what I have to say, but it's because I'm not scared to speak what I perceive as the truth. I'm also not holding on to whatever I say so tightly that it matters. Like if someone proves me wrong, I have no problem tweeting and being like, yeah, that tweet 7 tweets ago was really dumb. You know what I mean? Like that's okay with me, because I think as people, we are progressing constantly. And I think wanting and asking people to just always be a certain type of way can be disingenuous. So I try to present myself as myself, no matter what my PFP is. But I thought that was a really interesting point that you brought up. And it's true, because a lot of people in certain projects, you will find a bond with them that even if you left that project, you know that person would be somebody you could go back to and speak on different stuff, maybe a different project. Hey, have you checked this out? And because that you have similar core beliefs, you're going to get information from them or commentary from them that is going to be different than yours, because they're a different person, but it's going to be somewhat reflective of who you are. So I love that comment there about how the PFPs and NFT projects kind of give you a way to filter people. When you're on Twitter, it's just you could have a picture of a leaf, and this guy's got 70,000 followers. I don't know anything about him, but if he's got a picture of a killer bear and he's got 70,000 followers, for example, now I know a little bit of something about this person. Not a lot, but I know I have a starting point, okay, like I know who he associates with. Okay. A lot of us are who we associate with. So, those, like you said, those are good filter systems. So I think that is one of the value props of NFTs in the long run. And I think we're going to see end up being, it's not a dollar amount, but it still is an equitable thing to be a part of X, Y, or Z community, because it's almost like a resume or a slight reflection on your
100%.
character. So I loved what you said there.
Yeah.
Another thing you said that I wanted to touch on was the investors part of investors versus consumers. I think we're all buyers, when it comes to the NFT space to join a project. I have people categorized as traders. People are just coming in and out, making small flips and stacking ETH, because they're more of the crypto people. They're not really about the community and building. I have the builders and influencers, who I think those are the people that really add value to projects. And those are the people that build platforms for the project to continue to grow, meet new people, and retain people. It gives you something like it's like a rock in the ocean. It's like, this is where we can all hang out. All the seagulls, and the tides go down, where's our rock? Let's all go hang out here. So those are spaces. Those are, threads. Those are any sort of, those are individuals who have chosen to make themselves platforms for a project. But then there's also the investors. These are the people that are really, in my mind, giving the alpha on what this project can be. When you see a big, somebody with a lot of money come into a project and they're not flippers or traders, that can be a bullish sign on, okay, this person's going to sit in this project for a while. So when I look at NFT buyers, I categorize them into three people. I love that you said you're a builder, influencer, because you are. The spaces you run, the cross community stuff. That's another thing I love about you is you're not you're what is the word I'm looking for here?
I'm not a maxi.
You're not a maxi. You're a little agnostic. You're NFT agnostic. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not against any NFT. I'm not preaching one NFT or another. It's not like the Christian church. You're not like, I'm a Southern Baptist, well, I'm a Methodist. You're like, well, I'm just an NFT guy. I'm just a Jesus lover. You know what I mean? So to bring it back to Christianity there for a second. But, analogies are good for people, in my mind, because some, NFTs, you have to think about what you're looking at. You have to categorize things. And when new things exist, they have to be categorized sometimes for you. So appreciate the background you gave there and the comments you offered there. To move on to the next bit of this conversation, I think we're going to talk a little bit about, what founders owe projects versus what the consumers of the projects may owe the project. And then you also said something about being Web3 native, or you didn't say that exactly, but by being involved in Web3, whether you're making money or not, it's equitable because you're becoming Web3 native. Maybe you can't write a contract, but guys that can write a contract. Maybe you don't, maybe you don't have the exact connection somebody wants or needs, if somebody were to reach out to you, but because you're here, who the right people to ask would be. So being Web3 native, even in a bear market, just hanging around, being around, such a net positive, plus EV move overall. I think for people that are maybe feeling down on their bags, just, look at it a little bit more like that. You're building and honing a skill that less than 1% of people have in a world that less than probably 1% of people really exist in. But if you really believe, we know that this is just a new iteration or evolution of what the internet is. So it's definitely going to be equitable to stick around. I know there's a lot of talk about connecting Web 2 and Web 3. And Web 3 is just, it's learning the platforms and the people that are going to be the movers and shakers, kind of like Web 2, who are the people there. And it's a new opportunity to become that next person, that Gary Vee of Web 3. Although he was Gary Vee of Web 2. He's trying to be Gary Vee of Web 3, but maybe Cash will be the real Gary Vee of Web 3. We'll see. But circling back to founders, what do you think a founder owes a project as far as a timeline and as far as a roadmap? And when certain things happen and occur, what are your thoughts about bringing new things to the table? I'm looking at a thread here, which I'm going to pull up, and we don't have, hopefully it doesn't distract you from what you're going to say, but just a guy was talking. I saw this thread the other day about kind of how the roadmap NFTs are maybe on the way out, because they're not adapting properly. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on founders, roadmaps, and then adapting to things as they come and go in the space?
Personally, I think founders' responsibility when they launch a project right now, as we have seen that, everyone is trying to copy Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? Because they were the successful ones. And I think that's the biggest mistake, because you're not Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? And the one thing that they did correctly, and the reason I'm bringing them up, because it's a good example to kind of, hold on one second, please.
No worries. Take your time. I would.
I just wanted to close the door because there was some noise in the background.
Good.
Yeah, so the thing was like this. Everyone tries to put them as an example, but if you look at them really, they were one of the good things about them, they were 4 founders, right? So you have 4 different brains working, and you have at the same time 4 different avenues that these people can tackle at the same time, whether it's marketing, whether it's sponsorship, whether it's design, whether it's art, whether it's like future plan, metaverse, etc., like that, right? The founders that we have, I don't think they have per se responsibility towards the community members, but I think they owe the holders transparency. And I think that is one of the biggest issues in this space, is that they're not transparent. And when they say roadmap, you don't really know where you're going to be in 3 months, because NFTs are such a fast-paced moving space. It's not like a Web 2 that you have 2 years, 3 years to build in a background and then come, give your product to the consumer kind of thing, right? NFT, you're using community funding to actually try to implement your roadmap, and then they come and are not transparent with what they're doing with the money. Have they hired any staff? And I think that's what they owe to the community members, because it's all the community investors want. Like, if you think of stocks per se, every 3 months there's an earnings report, right? So every 3 months there's an update of where the company's at, where they want to be, and their stock price is depending on what? Future earnings. Like the example that you said in regards to a big person coming and investing in a company, it's good for the project because that person is a successful person per se, like Dingling or or Pransky, right? When they come and buy a project, there's a lot of followers and wallets that come and buy the same project because they believe that they know what they're doing because they've been successful at what they're doing, correct? So it's like, the same with Web 2. If you say, Call Icon has shorted this project, right? Everyone is like, what does he know that no one else knows, right? So it's the same kind of concept that they try to do. And if you want to do that, you have to understand that when a big holder comes and puts a lot of ETH into a project, they have seen something that they see their value, their money is going to make money for them in the next 3 or 6 months, right? So that's why a lot of people follow them, because they're like, they have done the research for us. If I follow his wallet, then I can have the same returns as they do, right? And from the investor, from the community side, the problem is most of the people that are investors in this space are not business-minded oriented people. They really don't know what they want, right? They're always they're always onto the next project. If you're a flipper and you really know that you're a flipper, it's a different story. But if you come and invest in a project, like for example yourself or myself, we're not flippers. We buy and we hold and we try to build with the founders that project because we believe in it, and we put sweat equity in there. We put free labor in there. Like, we onboard people through spaces. All that money goes back to where? The company. It doesn't come to me, right? The only way it will come back to me is if the price of the floor goes up, and then maybe I can sell 1 or 2 and take some profits out. But if the founder's roadmap per se doesn't go as planned, only the community members are going to get left holding the bag. The founder is already a millionaire, right? So that's where the problem is. So I think the future of NFTs is going to be in a way that if I'm going to launch an NFT project, just like if I want to open up a restaurant. So if I'm going to give you an example of this because I think it's very relatable. Say I want to open up a restaurant today, right? So what I do is I go look at the store and find like where the foot traffic is, for example, right? And then my finances has to be in order in a way that if I don't make any money, like extra money, just my cost, if I can cover my costs for the next 6 months or a year, I should have that money in the bank. Just because in case the customer doesn't come, just because if they don't like the food, I have to change my chef, There's a lot of things that comes with that business that I have to pre-plan these business decisions, right? And if I want to do the same way to be successful, I have to have all these organized. With a lot of NFT projects, they have an idea and they want to implement that idea using the community funding, right? And then when community members like us see, listen, you told us you were going to be a brand. So how is it that you suddenly change your idea, or we don't see any implementation of those actions that's needed? Like if you want to be a brand, what do? You spend 80%, 90% of your money on marketing. You don't even have the product. Like if you look at it, most of the branding per se, they want to get the name familiar in the market. Just the brand name. They're not worried about the product.
Yep.
They have time. They can say, hey, if you order today, we'll give it to you in 6 months. What they're worried about is getting the name out there, get the name familiar with the companies, right? And if you want to connect Web3 and Web2, you definitely need Web2 because Web2 has the data. Web2 has the information, has the age group that you're trying to attack. You have to get the information from Web2. There's no way that you can say, well, we're only a Web3 company. Bullshit, because your customers are going to come from Web2. So you have to actually allocate a marketing strategy of what target audience are you trying to get. And with that, you need data. Data is Web2. Data is not Web3. So there's no way that any Web3 can make it without Web2 data. Yep. So I think the future is going to be like if an NFT project wants to be launched, they're going to have that baseline. They're going to have those informations ready. And I believe that in a very short future, any projects that want to come out, they will have 6 months of their per se roadmap ready, and then they will try to get whitelist and launch their project. Because it's just like if you look at Amazon as a good example, they know their stock price 2 years in advance. They know what their stock price is going to be according to their revenue for the next 2 years, right? So NFT projects are going to be like this, right? Right now we have all these small people who don't have a lot of money, of course, because if they did that, they wouldn't need your money or my money. They could just create it, right? But you can have people like Moonbirds, I think, is a great example because they already have a lot of Web2 backing and VCs. They already have all that funding. So they can do things that most NFT projects cannot do. And I think that is going to be the kill shot for a lot of projects in Web3. I hope I answered your question.
No, that was a very good answer because, Web2, Web3, it's essentially the same thing. It's the internet. You know what I mean? It's just the way I, in my head, categorize it is, this is just me speaking on this isn't, I haven't researched this, but to me, to have a brand or a company, you need three things. You need content, you need commerce, and then you need community. So there was three things. So Web 1, in my opinion, was email. And what was that? That was about selling people stuff. Like go to my website, click this. That was commerce based. Web 2 became about content. Bring in Gary Vee. Suddenly you got to be on Facebook. You got to be on MySpace. You need to be on YouTube, and you're doing the same thing. You're still selling stuff, but now you added a second layer to it where it's content driven. That's where social media started popping up. Web 3, but it's not different. It's still on the internet. Web 3 is just the final iteration of that. And the thing about Web 3 to me is it's that third piece. I'm not flipping the camera off, but it's number 3, that community. It leads with community. Web 3 has led with community. It's no different than Web 1 or Web 2. It's just taking the primary piece, is changing the order of things of how you do them. So I don't think that, I think when we talk about Web 2, Web 3, sometimes people segregate them. They shouldn't really be segregated as much as they should just be filters of the exact same picture, if that makes sense. And I love what you said there about, if you want to make it in Web 3, you're obviously going to have to commune with Web 2. Because that's where everyone on Web 3 is coming from. I mean, I'm on the internet. Oh, look, NFT, click. Oh, okay, now I'm in Web 3. Suddenly I've clicked on OpenSea and I'm in Web 3. I was on Google. I was in Web 2. I clicked OpenSea. Now I'm in Web 3. It's not different, but it's different. You know what I mean? So I think that is something a lot of people kind of struggle with. Like, we're not really talking about different things. We're talking about kind of social constructs of the exact same thing as time has moved along. So Web3 is about the ownership. It's about the community first, and it's about art. One last thing I will say about founders. There was this huge thing that happened with Azuki, where people found out the founder had quote unquote rugged, which is a term which essentially is when you quit a project or you just are done with a project, it dies, it just becomes a rug. The founder of Azuki was found out to have quote unquote rugged 2 or 3 projects before. And when that happened, a lot of people thought that would be the end of Azuki. And they did suffer, but their project is still doing very, very well. And I think that that is an indicator of something you said about transparency. The truth came out, and when we have the truth, we can work with that. We can fix it, we can acknowledge it, we can work around it, we can all process it, and we can build off of that. And the community of Azuki has really they've risen up, without him. They don't need this guy anymore. Or I'm not exactly sure what his connection with the project is anymore, but the project didn't die when the bad news came out, The transparency came out. It adjusted the price of the project. Yeah, that definitely happened, but that wasn't the end. So I think there's something to be said there. And now I feel like Azuki's stronger than ever. I know you saw a lot of the tweets about NFT NYC. They had the most positive stuff that I saw about their events of anybody on Twitter, or somebody who was not there. They had a lot of positivity around them. I think that wouldn't have been possible. And I think in some ways that they brought the project got stronger because of the truth. Whether the truth was ugly or not didn't matter. The truth helped that project. So Azuki, I think, is still going to make it long term. There for a little while, for about 48 hours, it was kind of scary. But again, that was because there was this unknown element. Is he a bad guy? Did he rug these projects? But when everything was laid out there, people were like, okay, I can make an informed decision on what I'm going to do. Am I a builder? Am I a flipper? Am I an investor? You know what I mean? You have to have all the information to make an informed decision. So I think it's important for founders to be transparent with your customers. You can be doing all kinds of stuff on the back end, quote unquote. That's great. Tell somebody what it is. And don't just tell somebody, tell everybody. If you have 5,000 holders, there's no reason that 4,999 of them don't get to hear information and one of them does. That's really weird to me personally. And I'm in some projects that were like certain people have privileges, and I'm like, I pay the same for mine, and I bought it first. Nobody cared what I had to say. But anyway, we'll move on past that. Protecting the art. I think that's something about Web3 where it's community based, where a lot of guys that are coming in from Web 2 with the VC funding, everything's big. Everything is huge. You know what I mean? It's massive.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you have 3,000 people that have already committed to you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why we're trying to get our products and brands out in front of millions of people. That'll happen if the product is good, if the project works. But if you can't make your project work with the people who found it and started investing in it, I don't really know how it's going to work when you scale up. And I don't know why that has seemed to be the focus of everybody trying to scale up so fast. When you already have a customer base, a consumer base, a builder base, why would you disengage from those people to go look for new people? So bringing it back to the art idea. One of the things I think in NFTs, we were in a space the other night with Ryder Rips and Dame Dash, and Dame was talking about Web3 when he came into it was a beautiful thing because it was a year ago, it was all art based. You come in, you would make art, you would put it on a contract, and you could make money as an artist from owning, selling, and royalties off of that. And he said as soon as he saw that happening, he knew that he had to get involved because he knew people from Web 2, people that he knew, and has been in these rooms before. He said they're going to come in and try to create the systems like they have in Web 2 where they start making the majority of the money. And it's no longer about the creators or the communities. When it comes to the artistic expression of Web3, what are your kind of thoughts on, art as in like a smaller segment of the market where, you have some of these small artists, like I guess Beeple is a guy that a lot of people like, or there's a few others, or are you more, what am I trying to say here exactly? What are your thoughts on, do you think this is really about the art? Do you think the art is going to be something that is protected? And what is that going to look like as we go forward? Because there's obviously some IP stuff going on right now. People aren't really sure, because you buy the token, and the token reflects back to an image. Are you buying the image? Can you own that image? Is that even possible?
No.
And what does that mean for the artist? Now what does that mean if somebody changes that metadata? What happens to that guy who it was supposed to be about? So protecting the art and the artist in the space right now seems to be something that I'm interested in. I'm a social activist type of person. I think I'm starting to realize more and more that I'm probably more of an artist than I probably ever realized, just from a mentality standpoint. But what are your thoughts on protecting the art, the IP, and then the little guys in this space, the guys out here trying to make it? What are your thoughts on that as this space continues to be infiltrated by ex Silicon Valley, retired VC guys?
Again, it goes back to what you said. I think it's the truth and transparency, right? Because there's a lot of promises by projects that you own the IP rights, and you can do whatever you want with it, and that's a total lie. We can clearly see this in the space that you cannot, because if it was, Disney and all these other companies would jump in already and do this already, right? So I don't think that's the case. I think the transparency part is really important. Protecting the art is going to be really, really difficult because you don't really know what you own right now. We don't really know what we own. The artist that actually puts the art out can use that art to kind of like share the royalties of their income with their investors or the people that believed in them, and give them, like the music industry, right? Like instead of going to a record label and signing it, like Mick Mill, like with Rick Ross, right? He signed a contract at 19 years old. He's still stuck in it. He can't get out, right? That's the whole problem with him. But with like people with Web3, you have a chance of coming, hey, listen, like, Ross, I don't know if you know Ross, RUSS.
I love Rick Ross.
Yeah.
I love Meek Mill too.
Yeah, I'm talking about Ross, the other rapper, like he's independent artist, RUSS.
Russ.
Yeah. So he's an independent artist. So if he comes out and he wants to like put out an album, he can use the community, right, to say, hey, listen, or Brandon, like the artist that we know, can come and say, hey, listen, I want to launch an album. I need money to finish my album. Instead of going in and getting the advance per se from the record label, he uses people like us who are his fans, sell his NFTs, and then shares back part of that royalty with us as per se a profit. So both is win-win. The artist makes more. The artist has actually full control over its art, whether it's music, whether it's art, whatever like that. So no one else can take that from him. And you actually become the owner of that project. Like if I own that art, I actually own it, right? It's like the good thing about NFT is that you own it. Like every single asset that you have, it's not in a bank. It's not a safe deposit box. You don't have to go through a middleman. You don't have to get permission. Everything that is an asset to you, you own. That is the great thing about Web3 that most people, I think, are missing. That you actually own your assets. You can sell whenever you want. You don't have to ask anyone's permission. It's all that stuff. That's the great thing about space. The protecting the art part is, I think, is more kind of like, okay, I give you this art and you can go and say, make an iced tea out of it, right? I go buy an NFT. I own the IP rights to this, and I create this brand, and I put this token that I bought, this NFT, and I put a label on here, and I start marketing this. The only promise that we have is the founders of the project will not ask for a cease and desist and say, hey, we'll sue you because you're using our image, right? But it doesn't stop someone else. If I go and make this a popular brand, it doesn't stop you from coming and doing the same thing, even with my NFT, maybe a little bit of difference in design or color patterns or whatever, and copy my style and do it. There's nothing that I can do. There's no laws. There's nothing in this space right now that can actually protect anyone, to be honest. I think it's just too new to answer that question. And I think time will tell us, because I think an example would be the Rider and Bored Ape. I think that case, which, the lawsuit that's happening, I think that's going to be huge for this space, because the whole point of Rider is not racism. He brought the whole idea up to bring attention to the topic, bring attention to the subject, because that's something that people are sensitive on right now, especially in this space. So he's using that method to kind of mimic and make fun of Bored Ape, that you can't really sue me because there's no IP rights in NFT space. So I think that is the thing that most people don't understand about that case. They think it's about racism and the Nazis. It has nothing to do with that. Like, even if it does, who cares? Don't buy it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I saw a tweet from a very verified person. I don't want to say the name. He said, does Bored Ape Yacht Club cares how many black people own their NFTs? How is Bored Ape can decide who buys it and who doesn't buy it? If they're black, white, Mexican, like, what does that have to do with anything? Bored Ape can nothing to do about that, right? But the racism part about Ryder, which I think he's, they call him trolls or whatever name they want to give him, he's a genius because he's using something that people are sensitive in to bring attention to something that is totally a different topic, which is IP rights. And that's something that every single founder is telling people in the space, that you own the IP rights, and they're blatantly lying. Like, no one owns 100% of your IP rights because there's no laws about that. Again, this is my...
No, and that's your opinion. I'm of similar opinion. I've seen guys be like, well, I've licensed out my IP. I'm like, okay, 1 or 2 usage cases does not mean that that's what it is. You know what I mean? For every one person that's licensed their IP, there are, 4,000 people in your project that haven't and can't and won't, So what does it really mean as a part of your sales pitch? So protecting the art, it sounds like essentially it's going to be tough. I know I kind of poorly framed that when I brought it up, but I thought it was worth talking about. And I think that you made some good points. And the reality is, if you don't own the contract yourself, if you don't deploy it yourself, you really don't, you're not going to be able to control your art.
They can change the contract anytime.
Yeah. So that's the thing. It's, if you want to be an artist in this space, I would recommend that you don't necessarily contract out to do stuff for somebody else.
Yeah.
Again, this is just my opinion. I think the best way to protect your art personally, as music, audio, video, whatever it is, a picture, you just need, this is an opportunity to have total autonomous ownership and control. Take it. Don't do the Web 2 thing where you sell your time and your efforts and your energy to somebody else. Okay. That's not what you want to be doing right now, in my opinion. You want to be challenging. You want to be pushing forward. You want to take this opportunity to fall down over and over and over again until you get that right project, whatever it may be, and learn along the way. All right. Next thing we're going to talk about, and we're wrapping it up soon, ladies and gents. So we know this is a good conversation. We're hitting a lot of topics, but I mean, the NFT space it's very broad. It's like going into space. You can go up, down, left, right, diagonal, whatever. There's something there, so we can talk about anything. Onboarding versus retention. I know that was something we talked a little bit about before we got on the space. A lot of people, what are your thoughts on, knowing when to be worried about bringing new people into your project versus satisfying, rewarding, ensuring that the people who are there and have been adding equity to your project are also having enough equity given back to them to stay?
Yeah, I think I wrote a thread on that. I don't know if you can pull it up.
Yeah,
I wrote a thread about that, and I think if you also, a very smart, intelligent person, FinTech Junkie also wrote a thread about that, and he kind of made a similarities to Ninja Warriors. I don't know if you read that thread or not.
I did.
So if you pull both of the tweets up, I think you would kind of explain to the audience what we mean by this. But the main thing is, like, when you are actually starting a project, and in NFT, you need community spaces, you need community members, because really the only outlet we have to kind of echo about the project is through spaces and Twitter, right? Like, I don't go on talk about NFTs on Instagram or Facebook, right? My whole time I'm spending time where? On Twitter, right? So Twitter is like my only space that I can really talk about, even whether it's retention, whether it's onboarding. So with that being said, I think the most important thing about any business is retention. Onboarding will happen gradually, and it will happen through word of mouth. It will happen through trust. It will happen through founders delivering on their promises, right? Or on the deliver over promise kind of mentality, right? Don't say anything. like, and then drop stuff that people are just. I think a great example would be Kiloverse, right? Kiloverse is a small project, but if you notice, the founders haven't really asked community for anything, but they keep them engaged every 2 or 3 days. They put something in there, where they're heading. They put a little drama, little lore, little art, little free gift here, little free gift there. So I think that is really, really important, that retention is the most important thing in business is retention. Onboarding will happen over time. You need to set up the foundation. And the foundation is that retention. So once you have onboarded people, you have to keep them engaged. You have to keep them happy. You have to keep them wanting to come to you on Twitter, share, like, retweet, because that's how the algorithm of Twitter works. And that's how you onboard people. Like anyone that wants to come to NFT, they're not going to Facebook. They're not going to Instagram. They're going to Twitter. So when you start getting people with big followers to tweet out, verified people and famous people talk about that, I think that already starts onboarding people because it brings eyes to the project. So I think onboarding should be, it's important maybe in the beginning, but after that, it should be more about retention, and onboarding will just happen in a matter of time, depending on the delivery of the founders' promises, or, and the community members' word of mouth kind of thing, and spreading the news on Twitter.
Yeah. Retention, I think, like you said, I think it's more important than onboarding, because I mean, when you if you mint out, you've already onboarded everyone. You know what I mean? Like, you've onboarded a community. They exist. Now, how do you get those people to not flip out when it doubles or triples? That's the question. And to me, that's what, like you said, should be the most important, because I look at us as consumers. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a consumer. I'm not necessarily an investor. Like, I look at it like buying a house. It's hopefully it's an appreciating asset. I bought it, and maybe someday I'll sell it. Keeping people to stay in your project, there's the emotional versus logical. It's very logical sometimes to exit a project, and people will not do that because they're emotionally tied to a project.
Yeah.
How do you build loyalty and for that retention? And there's different ways you can do that. One is, you be engaged with your consumers and your audience. That's definitely probably the top one. But two is moment. We talked about this earlier, is momentum. If a project is going up, it's not going to happen forever. But you definitely want to make sure that your momentum on a long enough scale is positive, because momentum is everything. I mean, if you want to talk about human nature and emotions, people follow movements and momentum. I don't know. I think Andy Frisella is who I heard say that once. And that's interesting because it's, you have the movements, social movements. I'm buying this project because it's going to help rhinos with the mecha rhinos. You know what I mean? That was a sell. That was a reason to buy this, because you're doing something right. It's a movement for a positive trajectory of something. All right. So certain people bought it for that reason. Other people bought it for the momentum. Oh, wow. 4 sales in a minute, 5 sales in a minute. Human nature says, I want to be on that train going up. What I mean? It's momentum. When momentum goes away, though, and it's just simple physics. I said this the other day, an object in motion is more likely to remain in motion than an object at rest, period. I mean, this isn't complicated. When momentum dies, like, it can slow down, that's fine. But when it stops, you can't jumpstart your project back at mint and get all that emotion coming back again. So it's very important to me, if you want to have retention, to
keep the momentum going.
Keep the momentum. That's your number. To me, should be your number one priority, especially if it's going well.
That's what's called the lore, right? That's why, like, projects bring the lore aspect to keep people engaged, whether it's comic books, whether it's teasers and stuff. But there's one thing that is so important, is that loyalty has an expiration date.
Yep.
Loyalty has it. So if you don't, like, as a founder of a project, you don't understand that people's attention span normally. You ever watch TED Talk?
Yeah. I was watching TED Talks back.
You notice that each of them is like 18, 19 minutes?
Yeah. Because
of attention span, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at that, it's the same kind of fundamental things. We're human beings. It's so easy to analyze these things. If you know these facts, you can use them in a good way to keep your retention on and keep the momentum going to do the same thing using data, using lore, using excitement, FOMO, all that stuff, whatever terminology you want to use. You have to be able to kind of divide whatever you want to do in 6 months and actually bring it in snippets, like every week, 2 things, 1 thing, like you have to bring that, because NFT is such a fast space. There's projects dropping every second. Like if projects are dropping, you're competing against a market that is endless. I can drop a project tomorrow. It's just insane. So you have to understand how to retain customers.
I will jump in here and say, the power of the one individual person should not be understated. Look at Ryder Rips right now. He's one singular human being, and everyone in NFTs knows who he is. He hadn't even made his own NFT. You know what I mean? And he's fighting the good fight. If there's a person in your project and they get a little disgruntled, okay, you can let that fly and say, you know what, we're letting the paper hands exit. We're letting the, well, he wasn't good for the project. That's fine, and you can believe that. But if that happens to a second, a third, a fourth person, that's not good for your project because that's proving that your retention's going away. I will say, I'm in a project, I won't name the project's name, but I'm in a project that I advocated for heavily 2 months ago. I bought a ton of their NFTs. I liked the movement. I liked the momentum of it. I liked the ethos of the project. They were bought by a new founder. The new founder was not a good person. How did I know that? I was in DMs and I saw group chats of him saying things about key members of our community. When they left, suddenly they were drug addicts. Suddenly they were trying to steal information, all this stuff. And I'm like, why are you doing this? This doesn't make any sense. These people were some of the best people in your community. They left. And how are you going to do? You're going to try to discredit them. That, to me, things like that, it's like, if one of your better people in your community leaves, you should be worried about your critics a little more than just ignore them, especially when you have
As a founder, I would call him. Like, if your goal is to make a project successful, it's just like, you get customer reviews, right? Everything you buy, they want you to review. Why? Because if you leave a good review, that will bring more customers.
Yep. And just to close that out is, I was in this project when 2 or 3 people were really moving this project forward, myself included. And when this guy left, when he got put on blast, and when I started slowing down, all the talk and all the positivity and all the screenshots of all the good stuff going on and all the fake utility and all the PFPs, your price is going down.
Yeah.
And your sales, they're bot sales. We can see that. It doesn't take a genius to see that. You know what I mean? It's like, you can pinpoint it to those individuals in those decisions. And I think a lot of people in this space think they're a little too big to fail because they've got a bag or they've got money. But the reality is, what does a founder really owe them? Now, and I'll circle back to that vagabond space. One of the things that he said in that space, when people were like, you rugged funks, he said this, and I stopped me in my tracks. He said, I minted the project out. He's like, that was our roadmap. He's like, I provided them the minting experience. That was it. He said, that was it. He's like, I didn't promise them anything but that. He's like, I didn't rug them. He said they minted. They had a good time. And I was like, damn, like, he ain't wrong. Like, he was there through the mint. He got it going. He sold his product. He didn't owe them anything else. And I was like, I could justify that. As a Machiavellian, from a Machiavellian point of view, I did my part. You know what I mean? And in black and white, he really did. So it's kind of scary because founders can walk away or not walk away or slow down. And we can't really say, well, you didn't do what you said you'd do, because a lot of them don't say that they're doing anything. Yeah. They're just here. They're just participating. We're making something happen. Yeah. It can be a little bit daunting to know what's up, what's right, what's wrong, what's down, and where you can really say to somebody, no, that's not right, because what is right or wrong in this space? Is it the minting experience? Is it the community building? Is it delivering a t-shirt? Oh, we delivered the t-shirt, roadmap's over. What happens when the roadmap's complete? I'm in a couple of projects right now where the roadmap's been done completely for months. There's no new roadmap. We're still doing stuff, quote unquote, but I don't really know what's happening. I don't know what the next checkpoint is because no one's given me a map that says this is where we're going next, because we've already got where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that communities would do well to begin to pressure their founders and quote unquote teams to do, is to say when the one roadmap's great, like a roadmap, but you have to, like, what happens when that's done? Is that when that's done, are you out? Like, have you done your job? Is that the end of your business plan? Because as a business person, in your mind, you think a business just runs and runs and runs. In NFTs, do they run for 6 months and that's it? Like, I don't know, and I don't think we know either, honestly. When do the products, when do the services, when are the perks enough to really say this is a success or failure? Nobody really knows, unfortunately, and because nobody wants to write anything down in black and white besides what they actually have to. And that gets a little scary to me. I'm in a project. We are in a project. Recently, I heard some talk about the community building a roadmap. Yeah. I want to bang my head off a wall.
Yeah.
That's not our job. And not my job to tell you, founder, what to do. Okay. I hope to God you are doing something. I hope you know what that is. But the idea that the community would build some sort of roadmap was very strange to me. But I think that additional roadmaps, 4-step roadmaps, great. What we got to step 4, what's step 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? Like, what's next? And I think we need to start as an overall NFT space. If you're in a project and nothing's really happening, I think it's a fair question to say, what's next? And I think that an answer of be patient and you'll see. I think you can say that a couple of times, but I don't think that is fair to your people. And I don't think that's good business. I'm not a business giant, but I'm a consumer. I know I don't want to buy stuff from people that say stuff like that personally. So I can't imagine many other people are like, oh, wow, that sounds like a great pitch. Just wait. You know what I'm saying? Like, you'll find out later. Oh boy, I can't, like, that's not a pitch I want to be buying into. Yeah. So I think we as an NFT space overall, we need to ask ourselves what we're really buying and investing in. And we have to start being okay with the idea that we may have made some bad decisions. 100%. For all the endorphins that got dumped on our brains, for all the good relationships we may have made in certain projects, the project is not everything. The NFT, the PFP, the leadership of that project, you could take that entire community, just drop them in somewhere else. You know what I mean? It could happen.
It's happening.
It is happening. So what makes your NFT product? What makes it something people are going to want to stay in, want to join, and how do you ensure that continues to go the right way? And again, as individuals, we have to ask ourselves: is this where I want to put my money? Maybe it's a project you're sketched out about. Buy one. You don't need to buy 10. You don't need to be a whale. No one needs to be a whale. You don't have to do that. And be okay leaving projects too. One of the things that I've done too long is I've diamond hand certain things to zero against my better judgment. And I'm sure we all have, and there's nothing wrong with exiting a project in my mind, especially if you have done it the right way. The right way being honestly. I'm not going to say positively. Let me say honestly.
Yeah.
Because I tweeted this out the other day. Someone buys into a project and they scream it from the rooftops. They're retweeted a million times. This project's so good, blah, blah. But then when they leave a project, it's 3:30 in the morning on a Wednesday and nobody knows about it. You know what I mean? And then suddenly you're just like, where'd so-and-so go? They're gone. I want to know why you left as much as I want to know why you joined personally. Why can't you tell that information? And I think that information needs to be not looked at as FUD, but what it is, information. You know what I mean? Opinion. information, commentary on what you've seen, observed, felt within a project. And I think that we need to begin to be more critical of ourselves, of our leaders, of our projects. So, we hit all the bullet points in under an hour. I'm impressed with both of us, honestly.
Thank you so much for the time.
Yeah, this is awesome. I appreciate you coming on. It was a good conversation. Again, the spaces, I wouldn't say that we're like leaders in the space by any means, but we're here doing stuff, and I think we have valid thoughts and opinions. Maybe some of them were a little off base, and that's fine. I would love to hear comments, reactions from anybody on this.
Yes.
I would love for you to come back on the show with me in the future, because I mean, this is a really fun time. Like and subscribe if you're on the YouTube. If you're listening to this on the podcast feed, this used to be the QuirkyCast NFT podcast. That has changed now. The rebrand is going to be doxed, be a doxed show. People coming on knowing who these people are. I think that's a very important piece of Web3, because that's transparency. Who are you? If I don't know who you are, how can I trust you? And that's just where I come from. If I don't know who and what you are, and if you're keeping that from me, why would I trust you? You know what I mean? Like, what basis, what foundation of trust do we have? So Cash, fully doxed, me, fully doxed. Happy to be here, and keep an ear out for more shows in the future as we go through this rebrand. And as we have this mini bull market, we're over 1,000 for an Ethereum now. So we're all going to make it again.
Yeah.
Woo! Hallelujah. Happy Jesus. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Cash. I'm going to go ahead and end the show now. And everybody out there listening and did listen, I appreciate you. Thank you for that. And we will be back again soon, sooner than our last break. It won't be that long, I promise.
Fantastic.
All right. Take her easy.
Take care.